The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was huge, so huge that Tae-min could barely see the far walls through the floating platforms where hundreds of alien beings sat. The air smelled strange, like metal and something sweet that hurt his nose. He had been coming to these meetings for 5 years now, but he still felt small in this place. Tae-min sat in the human section, a small group of chairs near the middle of the hall. Around him sat Dr. Bo-Ra, Captain Wu-Jin, and 12 other humans who spoke for Earth. They were so few compared to the other groups. The Reptilian Alliance had 50 members. The Crystal Collective had 30. Even the small insect hives had 20 speakers. Today was supposed to be about trade routes. Counselor Veltar was talking about how humans were asking for too much. His voice was like rocks grinding together. Tae-min had heard this speech many times before. "The humans want equal shares," Veltar said, his yellow eyes looking down at the human section. "But what do they give us? They are young. They are weak. They have only been in space for a few hundred years. We have been traveling between stars for thousands of years." Other aliens made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their claws, others buzzed their wings. The crystal beings made a ringing noise, like broken glass. Dr. Bo-Ra shifted in her seat next to Tae-min. She was angry, he could tell. Her hands were tight on her tablet. She had spent 3 years working on new medicine that could help all the alien races. But Veltar never talked about that. High Arbiter Kenth raised one of his forearms. The old insect leader was ancient, maybe 1,000 years old. When he spoke, everyone had to listen. "The human request for the Gamma Sector routes will be discussed next cycle," Kenth said in his dry voice. "First, we must hear about the mining rights. Dispute." Tae-min had heard enough. For 5 years he had sat in this chair. For 5 years he had listened to the same words. Humans were too young. Humans were too new. Humans should be happy with what they got. But Tae-min knew the truth. Last month, human engineers had fixed the power problems on Station 7 when no one else could. Human doctors had found a cure for the plague that was killing the blue-skinned people. Human pilots had saved a crystal ship from pirates when their own military was too slow. The galaxy needed humans, but the Council did not want to admit it. Tae-min stood up. The hall became quiet. It was not time for humans to speak. Everyone stared at him. Some aliens looked confused. Others looked angry. Tae-min did not say anything. He picked up his tablet. He picked up his papers. He looked once around the great hall, meeting the eyes of aliens who had been his friends for years. Then, he walked toward the exit. Dr. Bo-Ra watched him go. For a moment, she sat still. Then she understood. She stood up too. She gathered her things and followed Tae-min. Captain Wu-Jin was next. Then Engineer Hyun-Ki. Then Scientist Min-A. One by one, every human in the hall stood up and walked out. They did not say goodbye. They did not make speeches. They just left. The aliens watched in shock. Veltar's mouth hung open. High Arbiter Kenth's wings twitched with confusion. "What is the meaning of this?" Veltar called out, but the humans were already gone. Outside the hall, the humans walked together through the long corridors of the council building. Their feet made soft sounds on the metal floor. Nobody spoke. They reached the transport bay where human ships waited. Tae-min finally stopped and turned to the others. "Send the message," he said quietly to Captain Wu-Jin. Wu-Jin pressed buttons on his communicator. Across the galaxy, every human ship, every human station, every human colony got the same message. Just 3 words. Time to go. On the mining station near Alpha Centauri, Supervisor Dong-hyun read the message. He had been expecting it for months. He turned to his workers. "Pack everything important," he said. "We leave in 6 hours." The alien workers looked confused. "Where are you going?" asked a 4-armed Tilak. "Home," Dong-hyun said. But he was not talking about Earth. On Research Station Omega, Dr. Young-ho was working with alien scientists to build better engines. When he got the message, he saved all his work onto a human-only drive. He deleted everything else. "What are you doing?" asked his partner, a crystal being named Zexvol. "My work is done here," Young-ho said. He handed Zexvol a small device. "This has the basic information. Good luck." Then he left. Zexvol stared at the device, not understanding that it contained only the simple parts of their work. The real discoveries, the important breakthroughs, were gone. Across the galaxy, the same thing happened everywhere. Human doctors finished their shifts and did not come back. Human engineers turned off their computers and walked away. Human traders completed their last deals and closed their shops. At the big military base on Titan Station, General Park Ji-won gathered his staff. The humans controlled the communication systems for 3 sectors. Without them, the alien fleets would have trouble talking to each other. "Sir," said Lieutenant Neri, "the aliens are asking why we are shutting down the systems. Tell them we are going home for vacation," Ji-won said. "A long vacation." The human ships began to move, not all at once and not in a hurry. They left like people going home after work. Some went toward Earth. Others went toward the outer systems. Many went in directions that confused the aliens who were watching. On Nexus Prime, High Arbiter Kenth called an emergency meeting. The council hall filled with worried voices. "Where are they going?" demanded Veltar. "Perhaps they are angry about the trade route decision," suggested Counselor Thex of the Crystal Collective. "Humans are emotional," said another voice. "They will come back when they calm down." But deep inside, some of the older aliens felt worried. They remembered stories about humans, how humans had fought wars against impossible odds, how humans never gave up even when they should, how humans could be very quiet before they did something big. 2 days later, every human was gone from Council space. The aliens found empty human quarters with beds still made. They found human offices with computers turned off and files deleted. They found human ships that had been left behind, but only the old ones that barely worked. On Earth, the human government made a simple announcement. "Earth is leaving the Galactic Council. We thank the Council for their hospitality. We wish them well." That was all. No angry words, no demands, no threats. The aliens tried to call human leaders, but nobody answered. They sent messages to human colonies, but got no reply. They looked for human ships, but the ships had vanished. Some aliens were happy. "Good," said Veltar. "Now we can make decisions without their complaining." Others were worried. "Who will fix the quantum stabilizers on Station 7? Asked Engineer Mortax. "We will learn," Veltar said. "How hard can it be?" But in his private thoughts, Veltar felt a cold fear. He remembered the human engineer Hyun-soo, who had always been working on those stabilizers. The human had made it look easy, but Veltar had seen the complicated equations on Hyun-soo's screen, numbers and symbols that hurt his brain to look at. On the outer edge of Council space, human ships gathered in dark areas between the stars. They met with other human ships that had been waiting for months. Some of these ships were huge, bigger than anything the Council had ever seen. They had been built in secret, in places the aliens did not know about. Admiral Jin Woo stood on the bridge of the largest ship, looking at screens that showed the entire human fleet. Thousands of ships, millions of people. They were ready. "All ships report ready for jump," said Captain So-ra. Jin Woo nodded. "Take us home." The human fleet vanished into space, leaving only empty darkness behind. The aliens would look for them, but they would not find them. Humans had learned much about hiding during their time with the Council. In the Council Hall on Nexus Prime, High Arbiter Kenth sat alone in the Great Chamber. The human chairs were empty. Tomorrow there would be no humans to fix problems or answer questions or suggest new ideas. For the first time in 1,000 years, Kent felt truly old. 3 months had passed since the humans left. At first, most aliens thought it was good. The council meetings were quieter now. No more human voices asking difficult questions or suggesting strange ideas. The other species could make decisions faster without humans always wanting to discuss every detail, but small problems were starting to appear. On Station Omega-7, Engineer Mortax stared at the quantum stabilizer controls. Red warning lights blinked at him like angry eyes. The machine made a humming sound that was getting louder each day. This was the 3rd time this week that something had gone wrong. When the human engineer Hyun-Soo had been here, the stabilizers never had problems. Hyun-Soo would walk around the machine, touching different parts, listening to the sounds it made. He would adjust things that Mortax could not even see. Then everything would work perfectly. Now Mortax had to do the job alone. He had all of Hyun-Soo's written instructions, but they did not help much. The instructions said things like, adjust the phase harmonics when the quantum field fluctuates. But how was he supposed to know when the field was fluctuating? Hyun-Soo had never needed to look at the sensors. He just knew. Computer, Mortax said, show me the stabilizer status. The computer screen filled with numbers and graphs, everything, looked normal. But the machine was still making that sound. Mortax pressed some buttons, trying to remember what Hyun-Soo used to do. The humming got louder. Across the station, other aliens were having similar problems. The communication array was working, but messages were taking longer to send. The life support systems were running, but the air felt different somehow. The artificial gravity was stable, but people kept feeling dizzy. All of these systems had been maintained by humans. Now aliens were trying to do the same work, but nothing felt right. In the medical bay, Dr. Zexanol looked at a patient who was sick with red fever. This disease was common among the crystal people, and there had always been a cure for it. Dr. Minji, the human doctor, had made new medicine that worked better than the old treatments. But now Dr. Minji was gone, and her medicine was running out. Can you make more of the human medicine? Asked the patient, her crystal body glowing red. With fever. I am trying, Dr. Zexanol said. He had the chemical formula that Dr. Minji had left behind, but when he tried to make the medicine, it did not work the same way. Something was missing, some small step that the human doctor had never written down. Dr. Zexanol had called other alien doctors for help. They were all having the same problem. The human medicines worked, but nobody could figure out how to make them properly. On the planet Velkar, Trader Guxton sat in his office looking at shipping reports. The numbers were bad, very bad. Before the humans left, trade between different species had been growing every month. Humans were good at finding new markets and making deals that worked for everyone. They understood what different species wanted and needed. Now the trade routes were becoming confused. The insect hives wanted food, but they would only accept certain types from certain planets. The Crystal Collective needed raw materials, but they were very picky about quality. The Reptilian Alliance had goods to sell, but they did not trust the other species enough to make fair deals. When humans had been around, they acted like translators, not just for language, but for understanding. They could explain why the insects were so careful about food. They could help the crystals find the materials they needed. They could convince the reptilians to trust other species. Without humans, everyone was suspicious of everyone else. Trade was slow and difficult. Guxton looked at his communication device. He could try to call some human traders he had known. Maybe they would come back if he offered them enough money. But when he tried to make the call, he got only silence. The human communication networks were not answering any calls from Council space. Far away, in the Council capital on Nexus Prime, High Arbiter Kenth was reading reports from across the galaxy. The reports all said the same thing. Problems were getting worse. On Mining Station 12, the quantum drills had stopped working. The alien engineers could not fix them without human help. On Agricultural World 3, the weather control systems were breaking down. Crops were dying because nobody knew how to adjust the climate machines that humans had built. On Frontier Base 9, the defense shields were failing. The base commander was asking for human technicians to come back, but no humans were answering. Kent's advisor, a nervous insect named Curvil, buzzed into the room. "Hi, Arbiter," Curvil said. "We have a bigger problem. Captain Nexaval has returned from the search mission." Captain Nexaval was a good military officer from the Crystal Collective. 3 weeks ago, Kent had sent him to look for the humans, find them, talk to them, bring them back. "What did he find?" Kent asked. "You should hear his report yourself," Curvil said. A few minutes later, Captain Nexaval stood in Kent's office. The crystal being's body was flickering with confused colors. That was never a good sign. "Hi, Arbiter," Nexaval said. "I followed the human ships to the edge of our space. Then I followed their trail beyond the galactic rim." "Beyond the rim?" Kent's wings twitched. "Nothing lives beyond the rim. It is empty space." "That is what we thought," Nexaval said. "But I found human colonies out there. Not just small outposts, real cities, thousands of humans living in places that should be impossible to survive." Kent felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "How is that possible?" "I do not know," Nexaval said. "The colonies were floating in space, far from any star. They had their own power sources, their own food production, their own defense systems. Technology I have never seen before." "Did you try to contact them?" "Yes. They saw my ship coming. They sent a simple message. 'Council ships are not welcome here. Leave now.' When I tried to get closer, they used some kind of weapon that disabled my engines. I had to drift for 2 days before my repair systems worked again." Kent was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "How long have these colonies been there?" "I scanned the area," Nexaval said. "Some of the structures look old. Maybe 50 years. Maybe more. 50 years. That meant humans had been building secret colonies for decades while they were still part of the Council. They had been planning this for a very long time." "What else did you see?" Kent asked. "Ships," Nexaval said. "Human ships like nothing in our databases. Fast and powerful. They escorted me to the edge of their territory and watched me leave. That night, Kent could not sleep. He stood at his window looking out at the lights of Nexus Prime. The city was beautiful, with tall towers and flying cars and aliens from dozens of species living together. But now he noticed things he had not seen before. Many of the buildings had been designed by humans. The traffic control system that kept the flying cars from crashing had been programmed by humans. Even the translation devices that let different species talk to each other used human algorithms. Humans were everywhere in the galaxy, even when they were not physically present. Kent thought about the early days when humans had first joined the Council. They had been so eager to learn, so excited to be part of something bigger than their own species. They had worked hard to prove themselves worthy. Maybe too hard. Kent remembered meetings where humans had suggested new ideas, only to be told they were too young to understand how things worked. He remembered humans volunteering for dangerous missions that other species did not want to do. He remembered humans always saying yes when asked to help, even when they were already doing too much work. The Council had gotten used to human help. They had started to expect it. And when humans asked for something in return, the Council had said no. Now the humans were gone, and the galaxy was falling apart without them. The next morning, Kent called an emergency council meeting. The Great Hall was full of worried aliens. Everyone had problems to report. "The humans will come back," Veltar said, but his voice did not sound confident. "They need us as much as we need them." "Do they?" asked Counselor Thex. "Captain Nexaval found human colonies that are completely independent. They do not need our trade or our protection." "Then we must make them need us," Veltar said. "We can stop selling them the materials they use for their technology." What materials? Thex asked. I checked the trade records. Humans buy very little. From us. Most of what they use they make themselves or get from uninhabited worlds. The hall became quiet. Aliens looked at each other with growing fear. What do we do? Someone asked. Kent did not have an answer. For the first time in his long life, the wise old arbiter did not know what to do. Outside, in the empty human quarters, the lights had been turned off. Dust was starting to gather on the desks where humans used to work. The galaxy was becoming a darker place, and nobody knew how to turn the lights back on. Dr. Koruval walked through the empty human research lab on Science Station Alpha. The crystal scientist's body glowed with curiosity as he looked at the equipment the humans had left behind. Everything was clean and organized, but it felt strange. Without the humans who used to work here, the lab had belonged to Dr. Deho, a human who studied ancient alien civilizations. Koruval had worked with him for 2 years, and they had become friends. Or at least, Koruval thought they were friends. Now he was here to see what secrets the humans had left behind. Koruval touched a computer terminal. The screen came to life, showing files and folders. Most of them were locked, but some were open. Koruval began to read. The first files were normal research reports about old ruins and ancient technology. But as Koruval read deeper, he found something strange. Dr. Deho had been studying more than just history. He had been studying the current political situation in the galaxy. There were detailed reports about every major alien species. How they thought, what they feared, what they wanted. There were predictions about future conflicts and suggestions for preventing wars. There were plans for new colonies in places the Council had never explored. Koruval felt confused. Why had a historian been doing political research? He found a video file labeled Personal Log, Day 847. Koruval opened it. Dr. Deho's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, like he had been working for many hours. The Reptilian Alliance is planning to claim the Vega system, Dr. Deho said to the camera. Their ships have been moving closer for 3 months. The Council does not see it because they are focused on the trade dispute with the insect hives. Someone needs to warn them, but they will not listen to a human. Koruval paused the video. The Reptilian Alliance had claimed the Vega System 6 months later, exactly as Dr. Deho had predicted. It had surprised everyone in the Council. He played more videos. In each one, Dr. Deho talked about problems that would happen weeks or months in the future. Most of his predictions had come true, but the most shocking thing was how Dr. Deho talked about the other aliens. He understood them better than they understood themselves. Veltar is not really angry about the trade routes, Dr. Deho said in one video. He is afraid that his people are falling behind in technology. He attacks humans because we make him feel weak. High Arbiter Kent knows the Council is broken, Dr. Deho said in another video. He sees the problems, but he is too old to change things. He hopes that younger leaders will fix everything after he dies. Koruval felt uncomfortable. These videos showed that humans had been watching the aliens very carefully, learning their secrets, understanding their weaknesses. He opened another folder and found technical documents. These were written by Dr. Sung-min, who had worked on communication technology. The documents made Koruval's crystals flash with shock. Dr. Sung-min had solved faster-than-light communication, real instant communication across any distance. The Council had been trying to do this for hundreds of years, but they had always failed. The physics were too complicated, the energy requirements too high. But the human had done it. The documents showed working prototypes, successful tests, and plans for a galaxy-wide network. Dr. Sung-min had built devices that could send messages instantly between stars. Why had she never told the Council about this? Koruval kept reading and found his answer. Dr. Sung-min had tried to share her discovery. She had presented her work to the science committee 3 times. Each time, the alien scientists had said it was impossible. They had called her research wishful thinking and human fantasy, so she had stopped trying to share it. In another part of the lab, Koruval found engineering plans that made his mind hurt to look at. Humans had designed machines that could build themselves. They had created materials that were stronger than anything the Council had ever seen. They had developed energy sources that were clean and unlimited. All of this technology existed. The humans had built it, but they had never shared it with the Council. Koruval began to understand something terrible. Humans had not been the weak junior partners that everyone thought they were. They had been pretending to be weak, while secretly becoming more advanced than any other species in the galaxy. He found one more folder labeled Project Haven. Inside were plans for something incredible, self-sufficient colonies that could survive anywhere, ships that could travel between galaxies, terraforming technology that could turn dead worlds into gardens in just a few years, defensive systems that could protect entire solar systems. The humans had been building a secret empire. Koruval's crystals flickered with fear as he read the final document in the folder. It was a timeline showing when each part of Project Haven would be completed. According to the timeline, the humans had been ready to leave the Council for over a year before they actually left. They had been waiting for the right moment, or maybe they had been hoping the Council would change. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Wu Jin stood on the bridge of a human ship in dark space. Around him, hundreds of other human ships floated, in the emptiness between stars. They were invisible to Council sensors, hidden by technology that the aliens could not detect. "Admiral Jin Wu wants to see you," said Lieutenant Nari. Wu Jin made his way to the flagship, a massive vessel that was bigger than anything the Council had ever built. Inside, he found Admiral Jin Wu studying reports from across the galaxy. "The Council is starting to understand," Jin Wu said without looking up. "They found Daeho's research." "Are you worried?" Wu Jin asked. "No," Jin Wu said. "It is too late for them to change anything, but it is interesting to watch them learn the truth." On the screen in front of them, they could see Council space. Lights that represented alien ships and stations were spread across hundreds of worlds. It looked impressive, but Wu Jin knew it was falling apart. "How long before they collapse completely?" Wu Jin asked. 6 months, Jin Wu said. "Maybe less. They cannot maintain their technology without us. They cannot solve their political problems without our help. They cannot defend themselves against the threats that are coming." "What threats?" Jin Wu pointed to another part of the screen, far beyond Council space. "The Void Devourers are moving again. They have been quiet for 10 years because we were secretly fighting them at the border. Now that we are gone, nothing is stopping them." Wu Jin felt a moment of sadness for his former alien colleagues. Many of them had been good people. They had just been too proud to see the truth. "Should we warn them?" he asked. "They would not listen," Jin Wu said. "They never listened before." Back on Science Station Alpha, Koruval had finished reading Dr. Daeho's files. He sat in the empty lab, trying to understand what it all meant. The humans had not left because they were angry. They had left because they knew the Council would never accept them as equals. No matter how much they helped, no matter how many problems they solved, the aliens would always see them as inferior. So the humans had made a different choice. They had built their own civilization in secret, a civilization that was more advanced, more stable and more powerful than the Council had ever been. Koruval thought about all the times he had seen humans at Council meetings. They had always been polite, always helpful, always willing to do extra work. He had thought they were eager to please. Now he realized they had been studying, learning, preparing. He picked up his communicator and called High Arbiter Kenth. "I need to speak with you immediately," Koruval said. "What I found in the human lab, it changes everything." An hour later, Koruval stood in the council chamber presenting his findings to the emergency assembly. The alien leaders listened with growing horror as he explained what the humans had really been doing. "They were spying on us," Veltar said angrily. "No," Koruval said. "They were trying to help us, but we kept refusing their help." "They lied to us about their technology," said another counselor. "They tried to share it," Koruval said. "We called them liars and dreamers." The chamber fell silent as the aliens realized the truth. They had driven away the most advanced species in the galaxy. Worse, they had done it through their own stupidity and pride. "Can we contact them?" asked Counselor Thex. "Can we apologize?" "Hi." Arbiter Kenth's old voice was very quiet when he answered. "Captain Nexaval tried to contact them. They told him to leave and never come back." "But surely they can be reasoned with," Thex said. "They are still the same humans we worked with for years." "Are they?" Kenth asked. "We treated them like children while they were secretly building an empire. Maybe we never knew them at all." In his private office later that night, Kenth read through Dr. Day-Ho's predictions one more time. The human had been right about everything. Every conflict, every crisis, every problem that had happened in the past year. At the end of the files, Kenth found one final prediction. It was dated just 1 week before the humans left. "The Council will realize their mistake within 6 months," Dr. Day-Ho had written. "But it will be too late. Humans are patient. But we do not give second chances to those who waste our first chances." Kenth closed the file and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were building a new future without the Council. A future that could have included everyone. If only the aliens had been wise enough to see what they had. Now they would face the darkness alone. Admiral Gexrin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet retreat from another lost battle. The Void Devourers had struck again, destroying 3 more Council worlds in the past week. His ships were damaged, his crews were exhausted, and he was running out of ideas. 6 months had passed since the humans left the galaxy. 6 months of watching everything fall apart. "Admiral," said his communications officer, a young insect named Tikval. "High Command is asking for your status report." Gexrin looked at his tactical display. Red marks showed where Void Devourer forces were advancing. Blue marks showed Council positions. There was too much red and not enough blue. "Tell them we lost the Kepler system," Gexrin said. "All 12 planets. 2 million civilians evacuated, but the industrial facilities are gone." Tikval's wings buzzed with nervousness. "Sir, that is the 5th system this month." "I know," Gexrin said quietly. The Admiral remembered when fighting the Void Devourers had been different. Humans had been part of his command staff then. They had strange ways of thinking about war that confused other aliens but somehow worked. Captain Young Wu had been his tactical advisor. The human could look at enemy movements and predict what they would do next, not through computer analysis or mathematical models, but through some mysterious understanding of how minds worked. "The Devourers are not just hunting," Young Wu had explained once. "They are playing. They enjoy the fear they create. If we understand their game, we can turn it against them." Following human advice, the Council fleet had won victory after victory. The Void Devourers had been pushed back to the edge of known space. For 10 years they had been quiet. Now they were back, and the Council had no idea how to stop them. "Sir," Tikval said, "incoming message from the 3rd Fleet. Admiral Morkex is requesting permission to retreat from the Vega system." Another retreat. Another failure. Gexrin thought about the last time he had seen Captain Youngwoo. The human had been packing his belongings from his quarters on the flagship. Gexrin had tried to convince him to stay. "The Devourers will come back," Gexrin had said. "We need your expertise." Youngwoo had looked sad, like someone saying goodbye to an old friend. "You never needed our expertise," he had said. "You needed someone to blame when things went wrong." The time, Gexerin had not understood what the human meant. Now he did. When the Council fleet won battles, the alien officers got credit for their brilliant leadership. When they lost battles, it was because the humans had given bad advice. Humans did the hard work and took the blame for failures they had not caused. "Grant Admiral Morkek's permission to retreat," Gexerin said. "Tell him to fall back to the Beta sector." On the planet Thexmar, Dr. Naltuk stood in his laboratory staring at a broken atmospheric processor. The machine was supposed to clean the air in the underground cities where his people lived. Without it working properly, thousands of crystal beings would start getting sick. The processor had been designed by humans 20 years ago. It was incredibly efficient and had never broken down before. Human technician Jun Ho had maintained it with quick visits every few months, spending just a few hours adjusting things that Dr. Naltuk could not even identify. Now, the machine was making strange noises and the air was starting to smell bad. Dr. Naltuk had been trying to fix it for 3 weeks. He had all the technical manuals that Jun Ho had left behind. He had studied every diagram and memorized every procedure. But something was wrong, and he could not figure out what. The manuals told him to calibrate the filtration matrix, but they did not explain how to know when it was calibrated correctly. They said to balance the chemical flow rates, but they did not say what the right balance should be. Jun Ho had never needed to look at the manuals. He would walk around the machine, listening to its sounds, watching the indicator lights, sometimes even smelling the air it produced. Then he would make small adjustments that somehow fixed everything. Dr. Naltuk tried to copy what he remembered of Jun Ho's methods. He listened to the machine's sounds, but they all seemed the same to him. He watched the lights, but they just blinked in patterns he did not understand. "Dr. Naltuk," said his assistant, "the air quality readings are getting worse. The city council is asking when the processor will be fixed." "Soon," Dr. Naltuk said, but he did not believe it himself. He thought about calling other atmospheric specialists from different planets. Maybe together they could solve the problem, but he knew they were all having similar troubles with their own human-designed systems. The worst part was that Dr. Naltuk could see that the machine was beautifully designed. Every part worked perfectly with every other part. The human engineers had created something elegant and efficient that should have run forever, but it needed human intuition to keep it working. Across the galaxy, similar stories were happening everywhere. On Trade Station Nexus 5, Merchant Zek Lari sat in his office looking at financial reports that made no sense. Trade between different species had dropped by 60% since the humans left, not because there was less demand for goods, but because nobody could organize the complex deals that kept the galactic economy running. Humans had been the translators, not just for language, but for culture. They understood that insect hives made decisions as groups and needed time to discuss every detail. They knew that crystal beings were suspicious of quick changes and preferred gradual negotiations. They realized that reptilian traders needed to feel respected and powerful even when they were selling basic materials. Without humans to smooth these differences, every trade negotiation became difficult. Aliens who had worked together for years were now arguing about things that had never been problems before. On Military Base Gamma 7, Commander Yextar stared at tactical plans that his staff had spent weeks developing. The plans looked good on paper, but something felt wrong about them. When humans had been part of the planning process, they had always asked strange questions. What if the enemy does something unexpected? What if our assumptions are wrong? What if there is something we have not thought of? These questions had been annoying, but they had made the plans better. Humans had a gift for imagining problems that had not happened yet and finding solutions before they were needed. Now the alien officers made plans that followed all the proper military procedures. The plans were logical and well organized, but they felt fragile, like they would break if anything went differently than expected. In his personal quarters, High Arbiter Kenth read through reports from across Council space. Every report told the same story. Things were falling apart, economic systems were failing, military forces were losing battles, technology was breaking down, political disputes were getting worse, and every problem could be traced back to the absence of humans. Kenth's advisor, Kerville, buzzed into the room with another stack of urgent messages. "High Arbiter," Kerville said, "the situation is getting critical. 17 systems are requesting emergency assistance. The Void Devourers have broken through our defensive lines. Trade routes are collapsing. Several member species are talking about leaving the Council." Kenth felt very tired. He had lived for over 1,000 years, leading the Council through many crises, but he had never faced anything like this. "What do our analysts say?" Kenth asked. "They say we need the humans back," Kerville said quietly. "And how do they suggest we accomplish that?" Kerville's wings drooped. "They do not know." That night, Kenth stood alone in the great council chamber. The huge hall was empty and dark, with only a few lights glowing near the center where his personal chair sat. He walked to the human section and looked at the empty chairs. 15 seats that had once held Earth's representatives. Now they were just furniture gathering dust. Kenth tried to remember the first time humans had come to this chamber. They had been so excited, so honored to be invited to join the galactic community. They had promised to work hard and contribute however they could. The Council had accepted them as junior members, thinking that humans would be grateful for any role they were given. The aliens had been generous in their own minds, welcoming a primitive species into their advanced civilization. But humans had not been primitive. They had been different. Where other species saw problems, humans saw opportunities. Where other species accepted limitations, humans found ways around them. Where other species followed traditions, humans created new solutions. The Council had mistaken human enthusiasm for weakness. They had confused human cooperation with submission. They had treated human innovations as lucky accidents rather than genuine breakthroughs. And now they were paying the price. Kenth's communicator chimed with an urgent message. Another system under attack. Another crisis that needed immediate attention. Another problem that would have been easily solved if humans were still here to help. But humans were not here. They were somewhere beyond the galactic rim, building their own future without the aliens who had rejected them. Kenth looked one more time at the empty human chairs, then turned and walked slowly out of the chamber. Behind him, the lights dimmed automatically, leaving the hall in darkness. In that darkness, 15 empty chairs sat like tombstones marking the death of what could have been the greatest alliance in galactic history. Instead, it had become the greatest mistake. 1 year had passed since the humans disappeared from Council space. Counselor Yexatar walked through what used to be the human embassy, his footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The building had been converted into a research center where scientists studied everything the humans had left behind, but it felt more like a memorial. In Dr. Deho's old office, Yexatar found teams of archaeologists carefully examining every object. They treated each human tool and document like a precious artifact from a lost civilization, which in a way it was. "Have you learned anything new?" Yexatar asked Dr. Koruval, who was leading the research. The crystal scientist's body flickered, with frustrated colors. "Every day we discover how much we did not understand," Koruval said. "Look at this." He showed Yexatar a simple device that looked like a metal cube with blinking lights. "Dr. Sungmin used this to calibrate communication arrays," Koruval explained. "We have tried for months to figure out how it works. Our best engineers cannot even turn it on." "Have you tried asking other humans?" "There are no other humans in Council space," Koruval said sadly. "And the ones beyond our borders will not speak to us." Yexatar picked up the device. It was heavier than it looked and warm to the touch. What makes you think this is important? Because Dr. Sung Min carried it everywhere, Koruval said. In every photo, every video, every security recording, she had this device with her. It must have been essential to her work. Maybe it was just a paperweight? A paperweight that she took to high-security military meetings? Yextar put the device down carefully. He was starting to understand Koruval's frustration. Every human object seemed simple on the surface, but incredibly complex underneath. In another room, Chief Analyst Tekvor was working with a team of political scientists. They had spent months studying human behavior patterns, trying to understand how one species could be so effective at solving problems that had puzzled the galaxy for centuries. "Show him the conflict resolution data," Tekvor said to his assistant. The wall screen lit up with numbers and charts. Yextar saw statistics that made his mind hurt. In the 50 years before humans joined the Council, Tekvor explained, we had an average of 12 military conflicts per year between member species. Trade disputes led to shooting wars. Border disagreements turned into decades-long feuds. Religious differences caused entire species to stop talking to each other. "I remember those times," Yextar said. "They were difficult." After humans joined the Council, the number of conflicts dropped to less than 2 per year. Tekvor continued. Not because there were fewer disagreements, but because humans found ways to solve them before they became wars. The screen showed specific examples. The vegan trade war that humans had prevented by suggesting a new shipping route that benefited everyone. The crystal insect religious dispute that humans had resolved by finding common ground that both species could accept. The reptilian succession crisis that humans had mediated by understanding the cultural importance of honor. "How did they do it?" Yextar asked. "We are still trying to figure that out," Tekvor said. "They seem to understand things about us that we do not understand about ourselves." In the basement of the building, military analyst Gravok was studying human tactical innovations. The walls were covered with battle plans and strategic analyses that painted a disturbing picture. The humans were not just good at preventing wars, Gravok explained to Yextar. When wars did happen, they were extraordinarily good at winning them. The displays showed battle after battle where human tactics had turned certain defeat into victory. The siege of Altair Prime, where Captain Young-woo had somehow convinced the enemy to surrender without firing a shot. The defense of the frontier. Worlds, where human strategies had stopped an invasion force 10 times larger than the defending fleet. What was their secret? Yextar asked. Unpredictability, Gravok said. Other species follow military doctrine. They do what their training teaches them to do. Humans did whatever worked, even if it seemed impossible or crazy. The screen showed the famous Battle of Wolf 359, where human ships had pretended to retreat, then used the gravity of a black hole to slingshot back and attack the enemy from behind. No military academy taught that maneuver because it was too dangerous. But it had worked. They also understood psychology better than anyone, Gravok continued. They could predict what enemies would do by understanding what enemies wanted. Not just victory, but why they wanted victory. Yextar thought about Admiral Gexrin's recent defeats against the Void Devourers. The Council's best military minds could not stop an enemy that humans had held in check for 10 years. That evening, Yextar joined High Arbiter Kenth for their daily briefing. The reports were as bad as ever. The situation with the Void Devourers is getting worse, Kenth said. They have taken 8 more systems this week. Our forces cannot match their speed or tactics. What about reinforcements from the core worlds? The core worlds are having their own problems, Kenth said. Without human engineers, their planetary defense systems are failing. Without human economists, their trade networks are collapsing. Every species is focused on their own survival. Yextar sat down heavily. How did we not see this coming? Because we did not want to see it, Kenth said. We told ourselves that humans were lucky, or that they had advantages we could not understand. We never admitted that they might actually be better than us at some things. Better than us at most things, Yextar corrected. Kent was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his personal computer and showed Yexatar a document that he had been working on. I have been writing a complete analysis of human contributions to the Council, Kent said. The numbers are shocking. The document showed that humans had been involved in 73% of all successful diplomatic missions. Human-designed technology was used in 41% of Council infrastructure. Human medical research had saved millions of alien lives. Human economic theories had increased galactic trade by 300%. They were essential, Yextar said. More than essential, Kent said. They were the heart of everything we accomplished. Without them, the Council was just a collection of species that tolerated each other. With them, we were a true civilization. Can we get them back? Kent showed Yextar another section of his analysis. It contained everything the Council had learned about current human activities. The humans had not just survived after leaving Council space. They had thrived beyond imagination. Their hidden colonies had grown into vast cities. Their secret technology had advanced far beyond anything the Council possessed. Their exploration ships had made contact with ancient civilizations that the Council had never known existed. They do not need us anymore, Kent said. If they ever did. What do you mean? I have been reading Dr. Deho's personal files very carefully, Kent said. There are hints that humans were always more advanced than they appeared. They may have been pretending to be primitive in order to study us. The idea was disturbing. It meant that everything the Council thought they knew about humans might have been wrong. Why would they do that? To learn, Kent said. Humans are curious about everything. Maybe they wanted to understand how a galactic civilization worked before they built their own. That night, Yextar could not sleep. He stood at his window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about all the humans he had known over the years. Ambassador Taemin, who had always been polite and respectful, even when other species were rude to him. Dr. Bo-Ra, who had worked impossible hours to develop new medicines for diseases that did not even affect humans. Captain Wu Jin, who had risked his life defending alien worlds that barely acknowledged his service. They had all seemed so eager to please, so grateful to be accepted by the galactic community. But maybe they had been studying the aliens all along, learning their strengths and weaknesses, preparing for the day when they would leave. The more Yextar thought about it, the more sense it made. Humans had always asked unusual questions and made unexpected connections. They had been interested in everything and everyone. They had learned faster than any species should have been able to learn. And when they finally left, they had been ready for anything. Yextar's communicator buzzed with an urgent message. Another system had fallen to the Void Devourers. Another piece of the Council's territory was gone forever. He wondered if humans were watching from their hidden colonies, seeing the civilization they had helped build slowly crumble without them. Did they feel sad about what was happening? Did they feel guilty? Did they feel anything at all? Or had they simply moved on to bigger and better things, leaving the aliens to learn too late what they had thrown away? Outside his window, the city lights seemed dimmer than they used to be. Maybe that was just his imagination. Or maybe the galaxy really was becoming a darker place without the humans who had brought so much light to it. 2 years had passed since the humans left, and High Arbiter Kent stood before the greatest gathering of alien leaders in galactic history. Representatives from every Council species filled the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime. Even species that had been enemies for centuries had come together for this moment. They were here to do something that had never been done before in the 1,000-year history of the Galactic Council. They were here to apologize. Fellow beings, Kent began, his ancient voice carrying across the silent hall, we have gathered to acknowledge the greatest mistake in our civilization's history. The words felt heavy in his mouth. For months, the Council's best diplomats had worked on this speech, crafting every sentence carefully. They had translated it into every human language, checked it for cultural sensitivity, and made sure it expressed genuine regret. "We invite humanity to return to the Galactic Council," Kent continued. "Not as junior members, but as equal partners. We offer them full representation, shared leadership, and our deepest apologies for our past failures." The message was broadcast on every frequency the Council could access. It was transmitted toward every part of space where humans might be hiding. It was repeated in hundreds of languages and sent with all the diplomatic protocols that showed respect and sincerity. Then they waited. Hours passed, then days, then weeks. The response was silence. Commander J1 stood on the observation deck of the human exploration ship New Horizon, watching the Council's messages arrive at their monitoring station. Around him, other human officers read the alien transmissions with quiet interest. "They are really trying," said Lieutenant He-Jin, looking at the latest diplomatic message. "This one promises us 3 seats on the High Council and control over our own territories. And this one offers us exclusive trade rights in the outer systems," added Captain Minho, reading another transmission. "They are getting desperate." Commander Jaewon said nothing. He had been watching the Council's decline for 2 years, and he felt no satisfaction in their suffering. These aliens had been his colleagues once. Some had even been his friends, but friendship was not enough to undo what had been done. "Sir," said Communications Officer Su-Jin, "Admiral Jin-Woo wants to see you in the command center." Jae-won made his way through the ship's corridors to the central command room. The New Horizon was one of humanity's newest vessels, built with technology that the Council could not even imagine. It was fast enough to travel between galaxies in weeks rather than centuries, powerful enough to defend entire star systems, and advanced enough to remain invisible to any sensors the aliens possessed. In the command center, Admiral Jin-Woo was studying a 3-dimensional map that showed both Council space and the expanding human territories. The contrast was striking. Council space was shrinking, marked with red zones where the Void Devourers had taken control. Human space was growing, marked with blue zones that represented thriving colonies and exploration bases. "The Council's latest offer," Jin-Woo said, handing Jae-won a datapad. Jae-won read through the message. It was more generous than any previous offer, promising humans almost everything they could have wanted 2 years ago. "What do you think?" Jin-Woo asked. "I think it is 2 years too late," Jae-won said. Jin-Woo nodded. "The Council believes this is about trade rights and political representation. They still do not understand." "What should we tell them?" "The truth," Jin-Woo said. "It is time they heard it from us directly." Back in Council space, the aliens continued their desperate attempts to contact humanity. They sent exploration ships to the edges of known space, hoping to find human colonies that might be willing to talk. They broadcast cultural exchanges and scientific collaborations. They even offered to make a human the next High Arbiter. But every attempt was met with silence or polite refusal. On Science Station Alpha, Dr. Koruval finally succeeded in activating one of Dr. Sung-min's communication devices. The small metal cube hummed to life, its lights blinking in complex patterns. For a moment, Koruval felt excitement. Maybe this device could reach the humans directly. Then the cube spoke in Dr. Sung-min's recorded voice. "If you are hearing this message, it means humans are no longer in Council space. This device contains technical specifications for emergency repairs to critical systems. Use them wisely." The device projected holographic instructions for fixing the quantum stabilizers, atmospheric processors, and communication arrays that were failing across the galaxy. It was incredibly valuable information that could save millions of lives, but it was also a farewell gift, the last help that humanity would ever give to the species that had rejected them. Dr. Koruval stared at the hologram for a long time before calling High Arbiter Kenth. "They left us instructions," he said when Kenth answered. emergency procedures for maintaining their technology. They knew we would need help, and they provided it. Even after we drove them away, Kent said quietly. Even then. That night, Kent sat alone in his office thinking about the long history of the Galactic Council. He had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of species, the endless cycles of war and peace that marked galactic history, but he had never seen anything like humanity. Other species joined the galaxy when they were ready, when they had something to offer or something to gain. Humans had joined when they were curious, when they wanted to learn and grow and contribute to something bigger than themselves. Other species left the galaxy when they were conquered or when they found better opportunities elsewhere. Humans had left when they were disappointed, and somehow that disappointment was more devastating than any military defeat. Kent's communicator chimed with an incoming message. For a moment, his heart leaped with hope. Maybe it was finally a response from humanity. But the message was from Admiral Gexrin, reporting another defeat against the Void Devourers. 3 more systems lost, 2 million more civilians evacuated. The Council's defensive lines were collapsing. Without human tactical expertise, the alien fleets could not match the Devourers' unpredictable strategies. Without human diplomacy, the Council species could not coordinate their defenses effectively. Without human innovation, they could not develop new weapons or tactics to turn the tide. The galaxy was slowly being consumed, and there was nothing the Council could do to stop it. 2 weeks later, the answer finally came. Every communication device in Council space activated simultaneously. Every screen, every speaker, every holographic projector suddenly displayed the same image. Ambassador Tae-min, sitting in a simple chair with the star-filled void of space behind him. He looked older than when he had left the Council chambers, 2 years ago. There were lines around his eyes and gray in his hair, but his voice was calm and steady when he spoke. "People of the Galactic Council," he began, "we have received your messages. Across the galaxy, billions of aliens stopped what they were doing to listen. You have offered us trade rights, political representation, and shared leadership." Tae-min continued. "You have apologized for past mistakes and promised to treat us as equals." Hope flickered in alien hearts. Maybe humanity would return. Maybe everything could be fixed. "We appreciate these offers," Tae-min said. "But we must decline." The hope died. "You believe this is about power or resources or recognition?" Tae-min continued. "You believe we left because we wanted more than you were willing to give." He paused, and for a moment his carefully controlled expression showed a hint of sadness. "You taught us that we were expendable," he said. "Every day for 50 years, you showed us that our contributions did not matter, that our ideas were not valued, that our presence was tolerated rather than welcomed." The words were spoken quietly, without anger or accusation. That somehow made them more painful to hear. "So we learned the lesson you taught us," Tae-min said. "We learned to be independent. We learned to solve our own problems. We learned to build our own future." Behind him, the image shifted to show human cities floating in the void between galaxies. Massive structures that defied physics as the Council understood it. Ships that moved like living things through impossible spaces. Technology that seemed more like magic than science. "We have found our place in the universe," Tae-min said. "And it is not with those who made us feel unwelcome." The image changed. Again, showing human contact with ancient civilizations that the Council had never known existed. Beings of pure energy, mechanical intelligences older than galaxies, creatures that lived in the space between dimensions. "We have made new friends," Tae-min said. "Friends who value our curiosity, our adaptability, our desire to explore and learn and grow." The final image showed Earth itself, but not as the Council remembered it. The planet was surrounded by a ring of cities and shipyards and research stations. It was beautiful and terrible and completely beyond anything the aliens had imagined possible. "We wish you well in your future endeavors," Taman said, his diplomat's training making the dismissal sound polite. "We hope you find the peace and prosperity that have always eluded you." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, High Arbiter Kent realized that humanity had just said goodbye to them forever. Not with anger or threats or demands for revenge, with disappointment, with the quiet sadness of friends who had been hurt too deeply to forgive. And somehow, that was the most devastating.